The second case I've compiled notes for would involve traveling to the remote territory of the Australian desert known as the Cabaltra Sands, which has been very rarely traveled in the past 100 years. The desert is stiflingly hot, unlivable, but still it must be charted and mapped. This is done for the Australian government every 10 or 15 years. Gregory Codian was a cartographer who went to Cabaltra with two other men in 1981 to camp and map the borders of the territory. In 1986, he committed himself to the Wahlberg Clinic for psychiatric care and stayed there for a year. He died in a car accident in 1990. Shortly after his death, a number of private letters to a friend of his were found. The letters had been written but never mailed. They revealed much about Codian's state of mind inside the hospital in the 6 years previous. The doctors at Wahlberg read the letters and found Codian to be a psychotic. It turned out that the letters pointed to the real reason he had committed himself to the hospital, reasons which he had never revealed to anyone. The letters themselves were lucid and well written. In them, Codian told of his experiences in Cabaltra. He claimed to have taken at least 200 photographs on the assignment to Cabaltra. Every one of these photos was available in government files except for 9, which Codian concealed from the Australians and which had been seen by no one but him to this day. Codian was the only man on the assignment to explore the infamous Sagittarius Caves, an area of the desert populated with dark caverns and miles of duneless hardpan. The area is approximately the size of Washington, D.C. Codian rode out on a buggy on October 9, 1981 with another cartographer, Lawrence Masterman. The two drove about 20 miles away from base camp, while the only other man on the mission, Jack Delphi, stayed behind. They spent a total of 9 hours near the Sagittarius Caves. At about 3 a.m., Codian went alone, on foot through the dark, taking pictures for their research, while Masterman stayed behind at the buggy to begin a topographical survey. Although they were in radio contact at all times, no messages were transmitted during this exploration. Codian's letters claimed that after walking just about 3 miles from Masterman's buggy, he caught sight of a curious dot on the horizon, one which he spotted between 2 tall rock formations. He estimated the dot to be about 4,000 feet away, and he began to walk toward it. As he closed the distance between himself and the dot, he began to notice other dots on the landscape. It appeared that there were quite a few of them, spaced randomly in a smooth area where rock formations and caves were minimal. When Codian was within 30 feet of the object, he gauged its height to be about 6 feet. Because of its uniform color, he believed it to be a rock formation. Then he shone a light on the object and was frozen with fear for several minutes. It was a human being, a man. The body was fully dressed, but seemed to be painted white from head to toe. Codian realized that the body was merely covered by sand that had frozen onto it during extreme temperatures. The man was wearing what had once been denim jeans and a lumberjack-type cotton shirt. He was wearing a watch. His boots were rooted into the desert's surface. The man's eyes were open and petrified. His mouth was also partly open, and sand swept into it as Codian watched. Codian looked around him, and less than a mile away he saw a pair of other dots on the horizon. He did not relay his findings to anyone out of fear. It took him 20 minutes to reach the next corpse. It was a woman this time, still wearing a house dress. There was too much sand encrusted on her face to determine her age. With a pair of high-powered binoculars, Codian scanned the landscape. He saw no less than 3 more forms on the horizon. In the 6 hours that Codian spent in the caves region, he was able to examine 9 such corpses. The last body he studied was of a young boy who had been placed in position on the desert floor sitting bolt upright in a chair-like structure. Only after chipping layer after layer of sand away did Codian see that the boy was in a wheelchair. Upon returning to Masterman, Codian reported nothing. His unwillingness to reveal what he had seen was due mostly to a firm belief that what he had experienced was not real. When they left Cabaltra 2 days later and began their return course back to Sydney, Codian hid the canisters of film he had taken of the Sagittarius Caves inside one of his boots. 3 weeks later, he was in Auckland, New Zealand, and developing the film on his own. For 8 months, Codian held on to the photos, not knowing what to do with them. Then, one day, he read a newspaper report of a UFO sighting over a remote Russian town. He thought nothing of it, but the mental image of an alien spacecraft stayed with him for days, until he realized what he could do. He flew to America and took his secret photographs to the NASA research base in Los Alamos, where the country's most extensive UFO library was kept. Most of the information there was non-classified. There was a $50,000 photo enhancer at Los Alamos, as well as something called the Civ file, an accumulation of reports of citizens throughout Europe and America who had died or disappeared mysteriously less than 6 months after reporting a UFO. Codian used the photo enhancer to identify the 9 corpses in his murky photographs. On July 7, 1987, the Los Alamos computer printed out a photograph of a young handicapped boy sitting at home on his parents' farm. The boy's name was David Clearwater, and in June of 1933 he had reported seeing several bright lights in the sky above the farm. He disappeared 4 days later. Of the 9 people Codian had photographed in Cabaltra, 3 appeared in the Civ file. 1 man had vanished from Oslo, Norway. The woman in the house dress disappeared from the south of France shortly after she claimed to have had her house explored by men with claws. Codian's letters took up about 200 pages and went into great detail about what he saw and what he thought. The conclusion he came to was that there were beings and races beyond space who did not want mankind to intrude on their sphere of influence, and who had perhaps placed the bodies of the abducted in a small corner of the earth as a kind of warning, or perhaps simply because they had no use for them anymore. Codian's doctors agreed that he was delusional and exhibited classic signs of schizophrenia. His relatives and few friends lost touch with him after he entered the hospital following a nervous breakdown. He was on various medications between 1986 and the year of his death. No one ever saw Codian's photographs. Their existence had seemed debatable, but in one of Codian's last letters he claimed to have sent them to a close cousin in New York. This was about 6 months before he died. The cousin is still alive. His address is 141 Trout Hollow, North Collins. I wrote to him 3 weeks ago. The letter has been signed for, but I've gotten no reply. If another 2 weeks go by, we will go there personally.